I should know what an IPA is, an India Pale Ale, based off of that name. I should expect something that has a high concentration of hop aromas, maybe a good bitterness to it, but then has a hop focus to the product. If I'm getting a Belgian blonde, I should have something that's more focused on the yeast fermentation, the quality of the yeast fermentation that comes from the Belgian yeast that's used in that product, and it's blonde, so it's a lighter type of color to that product.
Right, I heard this guy is one of the biggest beer experts in Norway, and he also has a really cool job. I'm looking forward to learn a lot more about it. DayOff was born from the simple idea of a bar conversation during a day off, with the goal to understand great people, the choices they've made, and their mindset. And with this approach, we are able to split the person from the personality. If you do enjoy the work we're doing here, hit the subscribe button and become part of the DayOff podcast community. Beer, one of the most popular drinks around the world. Today I was lucky enough to have Dave Gardonio, a beer expert who works at Vinmonopolet. And I can say without a doubt that this was absolutely one of the most interesting, compelling and complete conversations I ever had about this topic. We went really nerdy at some point about the ingredients of beer and what makes a beer a great quality beer. We also spoke about his background, his family. I mean, a super interesting conversation overall. And if you want to learn and understand a bit more about beer, make sure you watch this episode. Dave Gardonio, welcome to your day off.
Thanks very much for that. Good to see you, Felice.
Don't speak too early, all right? This might take a very negative turn very soon, okay?
Well, you invited me out here, so I feel like we'll see. We'll see what these questions are you have for me.
Very good. All right. Yes, I did invite you because you're a very interesting personality to me. And I think you have a lot of things that, well, first of all, I want to hear and learn. And I think the audience is going to feel the same way by the end of this.
We'll see about that, because usually I'm like the behind the scenes type of guy, the guy that shouldn't be in front of the camera and doing too much stuff. Just,
these are usually the most interesting ones.
This will be a good test to see if I'm television. Maybe I'm more of a radio voice. I don't know. We'll see.
No, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Listen, Dave, so there is one thing I still need to get straight about you. So it seems like from the outside, you have a great job, great knowledge about beer. You opened some distilleries. You're a great guy overall. There is just one thing, though. This one thing. Well, your one or both of your parents were Italians? Or
yeah, my dad was Italian.
Your dad was Italian?
Is my
Italian.
dad is Italian? Not really. Do you want me to go into that? I could talk
we'll
about that.
We'll go into it in a second, but I just wanted to understand. So, okay, your dad is Italian, but you were born and raised in Toronto, in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I just can't understand why he never taught you Italian. And if you miss that in your life. Such a beautiful language.
It's such a beautiful language. Felice, I know. It's a little bit embarrassing to be sitting across from you and real Italian manly man, and not be able to speak the language or just to jump into that. It was always, it's a bit of embarrassment, I think. But that was also with other things. I just never, you could say maybe I didn't prioritize it. Maybe my parents didn't prioritize it, because what happened was
yeah, tell me the story.
My dad's Italian, or he was born in Italy during the war, 1943, but he immigrated over when he was to Canada when he was very young, so 7 years old, 1950. And, maybe he never really felt that Italian. I know that he speaks it pretty fluently, at least when I was growing up. I saw him with my Italian relatives. We'd visited Italy a few times. He speaks with them. And even my mom, she learned Italian as well too. So there was Italian in the family.
Your mom is Canadian.
My mom is Canadian, and they met in Toronto, and they both are able to speak Italian. But I don't know, they just never.
So your mom learned Italian because of your dad, I guess.
She learned Italian because she had to make sure that she knew what my grandmother was saying about her. That's what she did. But then she said it was like a defensive thing. And I think, but she was more with languages. She knew a little bit of Spanish from before she could do French. In Canada, we are two languages. We need to know English and French, or we should learn French. And I learned French up until I was 14, but I never learned French. I'd never liked that. That was like my worst course. So I didn't.
That's how most people feel, anyways.
About
No,
French.
I'm joking. I'm joking. Let's not start a war. Another one.
So I didn't learn French. I tried to learn Italian later on in life. I never really kind of got to it. I took a few courses and then tried to use it on trips to Italy, and a little bit, maybe remember a little bit of it, but in the end, nothing.
Do you still have relatives in Italy?
My dad has cousins that are still there in the old town that he's in up in the north, in Friuli.
In Friuli.
Yeah. And they are still there. A lot of those aunts and uncles or cousins, it's a big family mess over there. There's a lot of Italian relatives over there.
It's even worse in the south.
But it's lovely as well too. So, but the last time I was there was when my grandmother passed. My grandfather, he passed when I was a baby. When I was 1 year old, he passed away. But my grandmother, she lived until I think it was 2014 or 15, and that was the last time I visited and saw the relatives. So it's been a little.
That could have been a great chance to to practice your Italian.
By that point, I was already here. I was already in Norway.
Right.
So already Norwegian is just pushing every other bit of knowledge out of my head. And even learning Norwegian was tough for me because I was already convinced, not knowing Italian, not knowing French, from being Canadian, that I would be terrible at languages. So I move over here. Everybody speaks English with me anyway, so I'm not learning really any Norwegian for several years in the brewing industry and everything I was doing, bars and restaurants, nothing. So then it didn't come until later, probably until I started working with the the construction of a distillery and on a building site, that I was talking with an Iranian guy, a Lithuanian guy, and we were speaking this broken Norwegian, and we were trying to make sense of it, but it was at least a comforting thing that we were all failing, or they were much better than me, but at least I could just say whatever, and they would encourage me that way. But eventually it just kind of goes afterwards. So I think it was just a mental block.
To me, it seems like you are, if I had to take a step back and analyze you as an individual in your life and in the places you lived, because, well, you were born and raised in Canada, but then you moved to Scotland to study.
Yep.
Right? And
Yep.
then afterwards you moved to Norway. Your dad is Italian, your mother is Canadian, and Canada is also, tell me if I'm wrong, Toronto is a bit of a melting pot, lots of different cultures and people. You're sort of like a cocktail, aren't you?
A cocktail. I don't know which part of the cocktail I am.
No, you are the whole cocktail, I guess. Because, a cocktail is made of a lot of different ingredients just coming together.
Sometimes I feel more like the sour element too.
You do?
You
That's
never know.
interesting.
But that's what I love about Toronto. It is a type of a cocktail. There's a lot of communities which stem from a lot of different cultures and a lot of of people moving from different countries. And so for me, growing up as a kid, you see language, you see a lot of interesting, cultural influences there. But the food was amazing. Thai food, Chinese food, Japanese food, Vietnamese, Jamaican beef patties. Love them. You don't get that over here. There's so to move to take that away from myself. That's actually, I think we talked about this as well too. Like the food culture is something that I miss quite a lot over there, and I was lucky to have that. Just being in a big city, being in Toronto, and having all those influences.
What's the thing you missed the most?
It's a tough question. I paused there because it's a really tough question, that being put on the spot. I think tomatoes is a big one. These beef tomatoes, quality tomatoes, different varieties of tomatoes. It's a huge thing. The produce sections that you see over there, they're just unbelievable. Varieties, freshness, things that aren't wrapped up in plastic before they're presented to you at a grocery store. Maybe it's the better way to preserve them, but it's not how I grew up. It was more fresh market stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
And yet you've never been to Napoli, huh? You know, we have some of the best tomatoes in the world, don't you?
I have to visit Napoli then. I really have to get down there because maybe I even haven't tasted what a really good Napolese tomato is.
We're not the only place with great tomatoes, but they're embodied in the culture in Napoli. Most of the dishes are made with some sort of tomato in any shape or form. And we grew up with those, with this very basic stuff. You were telling me earlier, just fresh cherry tomatoes on a slice of bread, or even just eat them on their own with a bit of olive oil and salt.
Yeah.
What else do you want?
Yeah. It's and those food experiences are, I think everybody shares those actually. That's the interesting thing. So when you get that type of culture with good food and everything, it's difficult to let that go again, to kind of give that up.
See, that's interesting. You know why? Because if you look closely at, now being philosophical just for 30 seconds, okay? If you look at food in general, food and different dishes from different countries, so food is the thing with the most borders, because you say, okay, that's an Italian dish, that's a Jamaican dish. And yet, if you look really closely into it, food is the thing with less borders in the world, right? Because, an Italian can indeed enjoy a Jamaican dish, a Japanese dish, or, and there is so much cross influence, in between the countries when it comes to food. So it's fair to say that it's the thing with the least borders in the world.
Totally agree. I just had before I came here, I had a banh mi, which is like Vietnamese food, but when they were colonized by France, they got introduced to the baguette. So it's their sandwich from a demi baguette with, fresh stuff on it and more Thai influence. So it's definitely interesting, cultural, very fun cocktail, if you will.
That's right. If I will. Yes. Okay. Good. Let's go back. So, born and raised in Canada. In what kind of family did you grow up in?
Probably pretty boring family.
Is it?
Yeah, I'd say normal, boring. There was nothing that was really exceptional or weird. We had two sisters, older sister, younger sister, so I'm in the middle. Two parents, my dad who's Italian, mom who's Canadian. She was a teacher. He was also a type of a teacher, but he was a lecturer at university for natural sciences. She became very successful career woman, being the vice principal and then a principal with Montessori schools and then a lot of schools in the Toronto system. And we were happy. We just, enjoyed ourselves as a family, and everybody's still around. So
nothing to complain.
Nice Canadian upbringing. Us Canadians were nice people. We're friendly. We're polite. We got taught those values that you try to be polite. Catholic influence. My mom is a devout Catholic.
All right.
My dad less so because he's a natural scientist, so I'm not sure really if he believes in anything.
That's interesting, isn't it?
It's pretty interesting, but we went to church. I went to church when I was a kid, and I remember being bored.
So they both your okay.
What else can you do as a kid at church?
Yeah,
you just sit there and you
course,
just you mouth the words, you sing a few things, and you're bored.
Yeah, that's right. And you're just waiting for it to be over.
Yeah.
Both of your parents come from an academic background then.
Yeah.
Did they also push you to study?
They probably pushed me. I don't think about if they pushed me or not. I value the academics, I think, more than I realize. And I don't know if that was them pushing or that I just was more engaged in it. I could do school pretty well. I don't know. I always thought I was all right with school. School was never a difficulty for me, and I got interested in science stuff more than anything else. Languages, not so much. That's where we kind of come to I studied chemistry. So my first degree was biochemistry.
So that's in Scotland?
That wasn't in Scotland. That was after what we call the high school in North America. I took a university degree, a bachelor's degree in biochemistry. And that's because the best two courses marks-wise were biology and chemistry. And I, without knowing what biochemistry was, I said, oh, I'll just do biochemistry. There's so many other things I probably should have done. I could have done differently that way, but that's just how it went. And I say that I was good with school. I've never said that I'm really smart. So I just sometimes I do dumb things as well too. But it was just this thing that I just said, okay, we'll study biochemistry.
Nice to know you're a human as well. But I think you are indeed really smart. Did I hear that right? You said my first degree. Does that imply you have more?
The other degree is the master's with brewing and distilling.
Right.
And that was Scotland. That's when I
Scotland.
was in just outside of Edinburgh. There's a school that's called 𝒟𝒻𝓙𝗢𝗙 University, the International Center of Brewing and Distilling, which is the department in there, which then does education for brewing and distilling, and is sponsored a little bit by the branch. I sometimes forget my English. Sometimes being over
You're
here.
Canadian, bro.
I'm Canadian, and I've been here for too long, and then I'm at loss for words with my my native language.
No, but I think that the message is clear. What I'm interested in is that it is the transition, right? So you got your first degree in biochemistry.
Yeah.
You're in Canada. I guess every once in a while you'll go out and have a beer yourself, right?
Too many. We can talk about that openly, right?
Of course we can.
We are younger and we do stupid things with alcohol.
Of
And I drank a lot of beer at that time. Being in a university and even maybe a North American university, there's the jock culture thing. I'm not really a jock. I was never good at many sports or anything like that, but it's something like appealing to go out and drink and, oh, we're having fun now, we're getting drunk. So there was a lot of that. But then the chemistry, biochemistry, I didn't know what to do with that afterwards. It's basically the chemical processes in your body, your DNA, how it works, your protein system, and how it's catalyzing different reactions in your body. Great, fantastic. I said at one point, maybe I should go into medicine. I did the medical college application test and I did okay, but like completely in the middle. So I didn't know what to do. And a sister's friend said there was an opening at the laboratory at a big brewery just outside of Toronto. And I got that job. That was one of my first jobs, was running the chemical analysis for beer. And then that's what started it all. And then when you're doing that, and at that point back in 2003, they still pay you in beer. So I was able to get these little like certificates that say you now can use this at any beer store and you get 12 of this brand or whatever. That's how I was part of my payment.
Wow. Okay.
And it's great. You're 20, I'm 23. I think this is like, I'm getting paid in beer. This is awesome. Salary's not that good, but the beer on the side, that's a great kicker for me at that point. And
I'm sure you made a lot of friends these days.
And that's maybe another stupid decision to go that way instead of going to medicine. Maybe I didn't, again, not saying that I'm smart, but that's what made the career.
So during these days, right? Did it happen to you that with your biochemistry background, when you were working in that lab, you would, just look at the test results of a beer or whatever you want to call it and be like, okay, well, these I understand. Oh, look at that. That's so interesting. You know what? I should study a little more of that.
Well, that type of influence in going to school for that was more that there was a brewmaster at that point, or we can call him more of a shift brewer, I guess, that had done that schooling before. And he had kind of come to that position that he had come to. I think he later on in his career became one of the brewmasters there. And he had gone to this school in Scotland and has just positive things to say about it. And I was working just contracts at the time. I would only work for 6 months contracts, and then that could be renewed or it could not be renewed. And I was there for maternity leave. So then in the end, I said, well, I'm having fun. I'm getting free beer. I'm having a good time, and this seems like something I want to keep going with. maybe if I do the schooling, then I look more attractive as a to employ, because what had happened was I went from the laboratory after the maternity leave was finished. There wasn't that opportunity anymore, but they needed someone down on the floor in the production, and I didn't understand the production all that well. I knew the chemical analysis. I could do that for you, but I didn't know really how to make beer. I was never a home brewer. So I said, all right, then I went down to the floor for 4 months, 4 or 6 months, I can't remember. And I said, all right, let's do this study, and then I can learn more about that, and then I can do the chemistry of this stuff. I can work on the floor, and I maybe I can be this guy I looked up to at the time.
That's beautiful. You see,
Jonathan Lowes, I think his name was.
Jonathan?
Jonathan Lowes.
All right, Jonathan, if you're watching, hello.
Hello, good to see you. I haven't seen him. I haven't even talked with him in forever. Probably since I left there.
Right. How many years has it been?
2000. I actually came back there after I did the study. Sorry, that's true. So I did the studies in 2005, 2006, and I came back and took another contract again in the same laboratory, and was thinking, okay, this is going to be a good career and keep going. But that's the thing that's why I'm here in Norway, is that when I went over to Scotland, then I met my future wife, 𝒟𝒏𝓙𝗙. She was also studying a master's degree in logistics and logistics management at the same time. So that's when we met, and then she came back and we moved back to Canada, but then eventually moved over here to Oslo, to Norway.
Right. So what I'm interested in this story is, well, so many things actually, but first of all, so would you say that your academic background, right, so studying chemistry, right, has that helped you later on when you applied your knowledge in practice? Because you have opened distilleries, you have created recipes for some spirits and beers, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
So was the academic background actually helpful?
Probably not at all.
All right, interesting.
Zero. I think I engaged myself in that type of thinking, that the chemistry of these things would be very interesting, and I, to some form, thought in those ways with product development. But I don't know. I think you see a lot of other people probably making much better quality or different types of things without that background anyways. I don't think it's a prerequisite for it. It was more of a prerequisite. Let's not say for recipes or stuff like that, but I also got into the engineering side. I think the engineering was more important for than the later on in life, and understanding how things are pieced together, how we're getting from A to B, we're pumping a liquid through a system. What's the best way to do this without the least amount of oxygen pickup? And you know, that's an interesting thing when you're talking about, let's say, the chemistry of it. You want to make sure that these products that you're making are not taking up oxygen when you don't want them to, because then you lose freshness.
Right.
And that's very important in the beer world. A little bit of micro-oxidation is okay for wine, and this oak barrel aging is integral for some of these products. But for beer, it's very detrimental for the most typical stuff that we're talking about, these pilsners, when you have a lot of oxygen. So those types of thinking processes are very great and very nerdy to a thing, but I don't know how much. I would debate it a little bit, because I think you can pick that up later on anyways with just good practices and everything like that. I don't think you have to get too specific into it, but it was the stuff that engaged me anyway. So I thought I was applying some of what I learned in production and making beers and these sorts of things, yeah, and spirits.
Well, but now, see, that's super interesting to me, man, because now I have a follow-up question, right? And it's maybe a tough one. So if you could go back, then would you have taken these studies?
I can't. Yes, I would have gone to do it, because I've had a very blessed life. I'm very happy with what happened with my life, but I will never get into a regret debate before I get to when my kids are born. The second that my kids are born and everything after that, then I can regret. But if I didn't do everything the exact same, I wouldn't have the family that I have. I wouldn't have the life that I have over here. I wouldn't have my 2 children, which I, are very dedicated to and cherish. So there's no real regret with anything and how I got here
Yeah, because
before
also,
that.
as you said, you moving to Scotland to take your second degree, then that's where you met your wife.
Yes. And
So
so
that makes sense.
that's a difficult one. I think I felt these things about regret when we had COVID, and I know that I was again a little bit engaged with the medicines, and I have a family that's in pharmaceuticals, so I probably could have gone down that road as well too. And then I could see myself being engaged with solving that problem of a global pandemic. These things, I followed the news like religiously in that period because it was interesting. I used to read books about pandemics, about Ebola pandemics. This famous book that's called The Hot Zone that talks about the outbreaks that we've had in Africa and how close we've been to catastrophe with that disease. That stuff is cool when you kind of know the chemistry and the stuff about viruses and how these things go. So there's a lot of really nerdy, silly things that I could get into. But I think I live and I'm more relaxed with beer and spirits now. Maybe less money, but then that's cool. I can still sit with
thing
that.
I ever heard.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that you don't have to get into it, but out of curiosity now, what do you think of the COVID pandemic then?
That was a great time for me because I don't know how social I am either. So I think this, and I had kids. I have a small kids at that point and a family. We were hanging around most of the time anyways. So if I couldn't go out as much or I wasn't eating out at restaurants, I didn't really lose that much in the period of life I was in. It was very difficult for a lot of people. I see the effect on my daughter. I think she was the oldest at that point. She was 4 or 5. And she couldn't do the things that she wanted to do in the schoolyard or the kindergarten area where they sectioned off things, and she couldn't swing one day when she wanted to swing. There was a little bit of a lasting effect there. So I understand it was really difficult on people. So the way we handled it is a great debate point for if we should have just let it burn through like we did in Sweden, or we restrict like we did here in Norway or other countries. The different ways that we handled it. It's going to be studied. It has been studied. The psychological effects had a big effect on people. But I was a pretty standard, boring person. So
But you were following what was going on from the news, right?
Yeah. I remember we would follow a type of website that would show you the amount of deaths that were, coming in the world based off of COVID. And you would follow the statistic and we'd see there were I was on a chat group with friends and we would say look at the American statistics that's going to blow up. And it got up to 1 million people and kept going over. And you think that's a lot of people that died of this. So there's this weird morbid curiosity that we also had with the whole exercise there. Really weird things. So, but I'm glad that I'm didn't work with it. I thought it was cool, very engaging, nerdy, but I'm glad I didn't have to do anything except for get a cotton swab up my nose a few times.
That's fine. Compared to, could have been much worse.
What did you do in the lockout? Do you remember?
I was. What was I doing? I was studying. I was studying, man.
So it's not that bad. You were able to
No,
focus?
not at all. Because see, I don't know the way my brain functions now is that I can't sit and do nothing for more than 20 minutes. I'll start to, I don't know, I'll feel guilty, I'll feel useless, So during the pandemic, at the beginning, we were all chilling because we didn't know how long this was going to go for, right?
No.
But then I continued my studies. I got my educator's license. I gave out many exams, not only with WSET, but also with some other entities. And yeah, a few things changed for me. I wasn't sure, job, no job, because, we didn't know. I was working with a Norwegian spirits producer back in the days as a global BA.
Yeah.
And we didn't know, because the world was in lockdown. So we didn't know anything. I was like, you know what? What's the best thing I can do right now? Is it sit and worry and cry? Or is it to read a book and give out a few of these exams that I haven't given in the past years because I've been too busy? Right?
Yeah.
So I was studying, and that's what I did myself. But Dave, back to you. Is there and then we can close the family chapter here, because I want to move on to beers and Norway and distilleries and so on.
Yeah.
Would you say that the way you were brought up and you were raised by your family, how has that affected the way you raise your kids now? Because you're a father of two, yes?
Yep.
Right? Is there anything that you lived or experienced or you've been taught when you were a kid that you carried on with you and now you teach your kids?
I feel like maybe I'm making the same mistake. Let's not say mistakes, but maybe I'm not as good at teaching my kids English as I should be, because they can speak Norwegian, but we speak Norwegian more and more at home than we have before. My daughter's taken to English all right. My son maybe not as much, but he's still younger. I think I'm falling a little bit there. I think that I enjoy the family part of it, and I have a good focus. I had a good upbringing, a happy upbringing, and that's what I'm trying to give to my kids. Just make sure that they're happy. I can't steer them a little bit in different directions, but it's not about really pushing things onto them. It's not that I was a sports player and they're going to play this sport, or that I have this type of identity that has to go down to them. In a sense, they can try to decide that for themselves, I hope. Happiness is they have this childhood that they should be able to enjoy. And that's what I think I cherish the most about everything with the family.
That's there was a chapter of a book I was reading many years ago, but I will never forget this. And it was something like, your kids are not your kids. They belong to the world. You're just borrowing them until they become adults.
I feel like I've heard that before. Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. I think it's a great quote, whoever wrote it. But I definitely agree that we only have a short period with our kids and this tight knit family. They're very dependent on you for a period of time, but then they go through different phases eventually where they'll go out and the friendship angle is going to be so important for them at a certain point, and taken away from the home more and more until they're gone. So, and that's like a depressing thing to talk about for a parent, I guess, that you're not going to have your kids, and they're going to be their own people afterwards. So it's fine. I'm in the middle of it. I'm in the middle of it right now. It's a lot of stress at the same time right now, and a lot of logistics and non-sleeping, and so that's part of the fun. That's what people tell you. It's so much fun being a parent. You're gonna miss these things. I can't
fun
wait.
And stress.
Can't wait to miss these things about not sleeping and having these troubles.
Yeah.
So go have kids, Felice. Do that, and it's going to be tons of fun. You'll love it. It'll be honestly, the best thing you do in your life. It's all these advice the parents give to other people. You're going to love it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to lack sleep. I already lack sleep anyway, so not much is going to change for me.
That's perfect then. But, you're halfway there.
I don't know, man. Honestly, Dave, I've now just trying to be funny for a second, but I forgot how it's done. Really, I might have to go and watch a YouTube tutorial or something like this. But no, because it just work these days, man.
Yeah.
Funny enough, this podcast is called Day Off, but I never take one. Actually, none of us do, really, ever, literally. On my day off, we're editing and checking, the episodes of the Day Off podcast.
Yeah.
So that's what we do.
I'm pretty relaxed at least, so thanks for that. It's my day off at least.
That's great. Listen, okay, so Scotland, you finish your degree. What happens then? How did you end up in Norway?
So then the wife,
yep.
She moved back with me from 2005 to 2008, I guess it was. 2006. So it wasn't so long. It was 2 years. And 2008 is a financial meltdown at that point. I think this is when the
economic crash, the stock market.
Economic crash, which was based off of the housing market in the US, which completely bottomed out. And a little bit...
Wasn't it the stock market in 2008?
Stock market completely went haywire, but a lot of this was based off of the US bonds and the market there. There were signs of this, and the economy wasn't that good in Canada before that anyway. So my wife, she worked, but it was tough to get a solid job. And there was a lot of opportunity back in Norway. So she said, I'm going to move back. There's this great job. I'm going to take it. And I said, you go and I'll try to find something. And 2008, and we're talking about the beer market or where beer was in Norway, there wasn't much going on at that point. So there was a year that we lived apart from 2008 to 2009. And then was applying for things the whole time. And eventually there came up an opportunity with a brewery called 𝒟𝒙𝗙𝗙 brewery, 𝒟𝒙𝗙 bryggeri, and it's that was the onus. It wasn't a full-time job; it was just a part-time job in the beginning, but it was an opportunity to come over, make a little bit of money, and start to establish myself. And it was a terrifying thing. Scotland was great because you like to feel that you were independent, but I'd saved up money working at the brewery to then pay for that trip, and then. I'm not saving any money. This was, with a girlfriend, more of a life decision thing more than anything. So that was a terrifying thing to move over here in the beginning. I was terrified to go outside of the house and speak. Like I would practice Norwegian. I would practice like what I'm going to say at the grocery store counter when they asked me if I wanted a bag or if I wanted a receipt. And then they would say something completely different because instead of saying 💿📫, they would say 𝒟𝒏𝓐, and I would stress out. I would just break down into English. But it was great too. It's an adventure. That's the adventure of it to come over here. And then that point in the beer industry in Norway, even in a lot of other places in the world as well too, there's this kind of magical period. The US craft brewing scene had really established itself through the 90s and the 2000s, and that expanded out and other countries get inspired.
Right.
And it's really coming into Norway in really around that point as well too. So I was fortunate enough to come at the same time that you have the craft beer thing starting in Norway, which is the huge takeaway, is that I think I've had a lot of success because of timing.
Yeah. Of course.
That it started off, and I started off with one good brewery, and then was able to go on to other projects and has had success as things are building up and things are going really well. And that I don't take for granted. That was good. And that scene and that kind of culture, the beer, the craft brewing culture, the breweries and small producers working together, having festivals together and kind of knowing each other is a nice little community, a little society.
Absolutely.
In itself.
But now you have a very interesting job nowadays. So you work for Vinmonopolet, which is the alcohol entity in Norway.
Yeah.
What exactly do you do at Vinmonopolet?
I am the beer product manager, I guess is the translation, product manager for beer. But I also look at other categories as well too, because the way the wine monopoly works is that we have the monopoly of sales of all alcohol products over 4.7% alcohol. And that means that's everything. So wine is, of course, higher than that. A lot of beers, or some beers, are over that alcohol percentage, but we find also ciders, which is also my responsibility. Ciders, sake from Japan,
which you love very much.
Which I'm very much getting into right now, and I think it's a very interesting and engaging thing for me right now. But mead as well as aromatized wines. So when you're adding weird stuff and you have spritzers and these sorts of things, that's also my responsibility area. So I look at all these kind of smaller categories, and then I am engaged in what happens with the sales, I guess, with these types of things. We know that we have customers for these products, and that we, from this demand, that we want to introduce products for these customers that they might find interesting, and just kind of meet that demand. The whole system, since it is a monopoly, we're just trying to meet this demand of what the consumer would like to have.
Right. So let's say, what does your typical day-to-day Monday or Tuesday, or pick whatever day?
There's a lot of coffee. Like? It was the first time I had. It was the first time I've had an office job. Really, it's kind of the second one. I worked at a big brewery called Olsen. There was more coffee there because I did have my own office for the first time there. But then at the Wine Monopoly, it's an office environment, and we work off of sales statistics and spreadsheets, and we're looking at trends and the things that we can see from our overall sales. But we have meetings. We have a product department where we discuss the type of the way that we let these products compete with each other so that they then either stay in our system or go out of our system based off of demand. We look at maybe future trends that are coming in. We look at the sales statistics and really try to really deep down go into really what is of interest for the customer. So then there's follow-up meetings with different categories. We're also looking a lot at sustainability these days. We want to make sure that our supply chain is something that's
as sustainable as possible.
As sustainable as possible. And a lot of this is going to be downloaded from the EU in the end. And we're taking into law ourselves here in Norway to try to make sure that, workers' rights, human rights are kept in the production of these wines or these products, spirits from all over the world, that we can at least go
That's
back.
a big one.
It's a pretty big one, and even the way that we're the packaging that we're using, that's not too heavy, so that you're just wasting gas when you're shipping it around. These are the sort of factors that we're also taking a look at, because we see that kind of trend towards sustainability, interest from the customer side, and we want to be able to also provide that for the customer. So that's also another thing. So there's a lot of different departments that kind of go in, and then, our shops are very good with meeting the customer. We try to pride ourselves on the way that we have a interaction with our customer, that we are able to give good product information and recommendations. If a customer really comes to us and says, "What is this wine? Can you recommend a wine for this type of food?" We have a type of internal education to lift the competence of all of our staff so that they can meet these customers, the ones that really would like help, to then recommend and point them in the right direction. So this type of meeting is also very important with how we try to engage the customer, meet the customer, so that the customer has a positive experience.
I think, tell me what you think here. The word sustainability gets thrown around a lot, right?
Yeah.
And some people only connect the word sustainability with a certain meaning, and sometimes we forget that sustainability it's not only, planet, this green sort of meaning that we give it, but it's also related to human rights.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And human sustainability. And you said you look into that as well and try to use producers who do follow these guidelines according to, whatever law the EU has in place. But so my question on that is, how do you ensure exactly? Because you have producers from all over the world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have systems in place, I guess, to ensure.
We're working with incorporating systems so that we have third-party auditing systems that can follow up these things, and you have certifications, fair trade systems that then give a certification that gives you a bit of a quality stamp in that way. That helps, but it's not always that easy. Some wine regions can have problems with human rights every once in a while, and when those issues come up, we have to kind of look and follow that up to make sure that we're again sourcing products that are not going to go over people's everyday work life.
That's interesting and beautiful, if I might add.
It's a nice concept. It's a nice not concept. It's a nice. It's a great way to try to do this. To think about products is one thing, but then to think about, why do we have these products here? Why do we need these products? And if it's a luxury product, we shouldn't have a luxury product that makes a crappy life for someone, let's say. So we want
Otherwise, the whole point of luxury falls down. Right?
Yeah, a little bit. I hope that people also see it in that way as well too. Is that it's?
You think they do?
I think there's a certain group of people that look at that way. We like to kind of group people in the way that they purchase things as well too, as sometimes they're a dedicated customers, that they are more concerned with these things than other people. There's also like a conscious consumer as well too that we talk about. There's but sometimes there's other people that they just want more of a cheaper variety or something that's maybe just a good recommendation. So we kind of group our customer as well too, and try to look at the different purchasing habits and from different angles. And again, everything is so you can really look into all these different categories and put statistics beside it that then try to inform about when we're launching new products, what we're going to bring in that can maybe meet these people or give a tool for our shop employee to recommend to halibut. These are the things that we think about. What type of white wine is going to go with halibut? This is very engaging for us, so we must work on it. But it is something that sometimes wine writers write about, and we have a lot of wine sales, and we were also the only place where you can get spirits, and beer is actually a very small category compared to what the total sales of what beer is in Norway, which most of it is under 4.7 and goes through the grocery store. So I think right now we're only at about 3.7 million liters, whereas you're talking hundreds of million, over 100 million liters of sales in grocery stores. So we're a little bit more niche, I guess you could say.
I don't know, Vinmonopolet and niche. Yes, on the beer, yes. But then you get,
but wine,
everything else. So.
If I could say that in that system, the wine monopoly system, we have beer and everything else, that would completely turn everything on its head, because it is wine and then spirits and everything else. But we have alcohol-free products that we also offer for people, and that's a huge growth thing right now.
Yes, I want to talk about that, actually. First of all, I just wanted to say two things. Number one, I think the amount of learning you experience in a company like that, it's unmatched, because you all of a sudden you learn all about customers' behavior, and then you learn how to categorize different customers and the systems and the millions of things, the billions of things that I from the outside do not see or even think about when I think about wine monopoly. The learning must be unmatched. Would you agree with this?
I'd agree with this, and I think the mix of people that we have at the Wine Monopoly at the central office, they are people that are very engaged and come from maybe diverse backgrounds, but they bring that type of interest and nerdiness. So you do learn a lot from these people. I learn a lot from sustainability people. You do learn a lot. That's true. Everything is a bit of a learning process, but this was completely a different side. I had always produced. I was never the sales guy at the breweries before, at the distillery. So this was a new world completely for me.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The other thing I wanted to understand a little more is, well, we've been throwing around the word Vinmonopoly or the Vinmonopolet, wine monopoly. What is it? Can you tell me the what, the when, and the why?
Yeah, the wine monopoly was what was established after Prohibition here in Norway. So
because Norway did have a prohibition.
Norway did have a prohibition, like a lot of different countries. And I think I'll tell a really crappy version of the story, but I'll still try it anyway. So I don't know when Prohibition started, but I do know that it was lifted with the wine monopoly, Vinmonopolet agreement in 1922. And I think the background of this, the reason why they got rid of it, was that they wanted to control the alcohol sales and have that say, we'll control the alcohol sales and make sure that it's done in a responsible way for the health of the people.
This was the Norwegian government.
Yeah, we wanted to do it that way, but I think it was kind of pushed onto the government because Norway at that point we were fish exporters. And we wanted to send our cod and everything down to Portugal and Spain and sell it as an export. But
Dave, when you say we, you realize you are Canadian, right?
I
but
am
you've been
Canadian.
living here for
Let's
so
say
long.
but I'm also the wine monopoly. So say I'm the wine monopoly now as well too.
Right. Of course.
So then we have us with our fishes. Us Norwegians, we're sending the fish down. We wanted to do it to Spain, Portugal, and Europe. They want to sell back their fortified wines and their wine into the Norwegian system. So they say, well, no, you guys can't have this prohibition. If you guys open up, then we'll have a more favorable export for your fish. So this was maybe part of the onus, as far as what I know of the story, to kind of push for that. So it's opened up, and now it's over 100 years that we've had this form of the shop. And we have a similar system in Sweden that's called Systembolaget. In Finland, it was called Alko. There's a type of Icelandic system. There's also one in where I'm from, in Ontario, the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, and different provinces have a type of a control. But a lot of these have also been more liberalized. I think Norway is still a little bit more monopolized and strict. But it is a very interesting way to sell spirits and wine and stuff.
Yeah, because some people are pro, it, and some people are against it. But personally, I think it's a good thing, because if I think it's good to have more control over a substance that can, can make you do crazy things if you abuse it. I would say. So it's good to have control over it. But can you explain me how Vinmonopolet exactly works? So it's compared to other countries where it's not a monopoly, you say, or what's the English words?
Yeah, a monopoly system.
Yeah, where it's a monopoly system.
Yeah, because we also used to have the monopoly on the production of spirits as well too. I think this was kind of broken up again
only recently.
Yeah, the 90s up into 2000s, where they then separated out the spirit and wine production from the actual wine monopoly side of it. And the effect of this is that the one thing that the wine monopoly kind of gave from itself at this point is that the wine monopoly does not import anything itself. So all the products then have to be supplied by importers. So it goes to this type of 3-tiered system almost that you have seen in other countries as well. So private importers, or these bigger import companies that then take all the products in. They can distribute it to bars and restaurants, but then they have to also distribute to us if they want to sell it to a private person.
To consumers.
Yeah. So it's almost a 3-tier system in that sort of sense. And we do then have this type of selection that tries to stimulate an open market, simulate an open market at the same time, so that, again, having this customer focus, we're looking at the statistics and we say we have so many products because they're relevant for the customer. The customer wants this. It's their choice from the volume of sales that they're doing. So that's what the market would have done anyways. But everything's centralized through our iron grip and control of the market. So there is this type of nice part where it's we're a very big system, a central ordering point. So when people can sell into the wine monopoly, and if you get a core range listing, it's a very big volumes of sales. So it can be very attractive for some producers. And this type of standardized thing over entire country is nice in that sort of thing. So you have one type of label, one type of billing system and timetables to hold on to. Whereas in some other countries, if you have smaller shops and chains, then you also have to have different suppliers that you have to work with or sell your products to, which is a little bit that can sometimes drive the price up. Make it a little bit more difficult to suppliers. So there's a type of simplicity that also goes with this type of monopoly system. And with that simplicity as well, we are able to keep costs a little bit down, our running costs, but then we don't really do any price negotiations either. What the importers want to offer the products up as, or what they think the sales price should be, that's what it turns out in our system with the type of calculator that says what our advances should be. So there's a type of nice parts of that system that we're trying to be neutral. We're trying to simulate an open market anyways, and we're just a really centralized purchasing system, which can be very attractive, but then it is the only game in town. So then it's very difficult for maybe more niche products or products that don't have bigger brands recognition, maybe to get this type of recognition in our system. And Norway does not have any sort of advertising for alcoholic products. That's illegal. So it's a very difficult situation to come in as a small supplier, a new supplier. With the way our system is built up. That's me talking from a producer side, from seeing that side as well too, from seeing that type of difficulty as well, seeing the kind of the advantages.
But then again, that's not the role of Vinmonopolet, because the role of Vinmonopolet is to say, okay, here is the demand we have, let's try and meet that demand of the consumer. Let's basically just give people what they want.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
I think, small versus big, that's a conversation, and it's it's a conversation that you can take in any context, in any other country, really, even where they do have, even where they do allow alcohol marketing. It's the same thing because, the big guys are going to have way more budget than the small guys. So it's always the same story in the end.
I agree with you there. And that's another nice thing about the type of Scandinavian or the Norwegian system with not having that much advertisement as well too, is that puts people a little bit more on the level playing ground in that sort of sense. That advantage we see as well too, as well as there can be a difficulty. So it's you see it from both sides. We try to not think about it that much. Do what we do. Just do what the system does.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though I think this is a big subject. This advertising ban
It's more and more of this now. We see that there's been some forms of more liberalization that's happening in the Finnish market, in the Swedish market, where ordering from the internet is more available now in Sweden from other countries, import through that way. Alco now has a challenge where products 8% and under can be sold in grocery stores. So we're seeing grocery store chains that are having wine, weaker wines and these sorts of things in their selection as well too. So the monopoly order, it can be challenged, has been challenged, will be challenged. So it's going to be an interesting few years, I think.
Yep, especially these days where people are drinking less and less alcohol.
Yeah, that's true.
You were telling me something earlier, how I think that story is going to stay with me for quite some time. How the new generation is approaching health in a completely different way. Really.
Yeah.
You were telling me now with your son. You were telling me how you almost have to convince him to eat an ice cream.
Well, we know about these things. We talk about this with our suppliers as well, and we have this as part of our information system, that there's a type of trend that's been going for many years that's called NOLO. Either no alcohol or low alcohol is a thing that's more attractive to younger people, or just there's a bigger sales volume that's going in that direction. And I've heard friends that have children talk about their kids, maybe teenagers, that are just not drinking at all, whereas that was maybe a different history from when we grew up.
Yep.
I'm talking about myself. I'm sure maybe you had a little bit of the same experience.
Same thing. Yeah.
And now we're seeing all these things come together and seeing the sales volume drop, or that they're, people are focusing on lower alcohol alternatives, lighter tasting stuff, not heavy red wines anymore, more lighter wines because the temperature's warming up globally. That's actually a trend. But then we're thinking that kids are drinking less. And I heard this from friends about their teenage kids. And then I saw my son, we were talking about this, that he doesn't want to eat ice cream sometimes. That how
old is he?
He's 6 years old. And he is a little bit obsessed about health stuff. And he says these weird things that, is this healthy for me, Dad? He asks these things. He's asking these questions at 6. If a type of crisp bread with something on it is healthy or not, or if something that's maybe like a croissant, or is this healthy, Dad? And I say, it's kind of healthy. We have like a little bit of a thumb regulation that we say is very healthy, or it's okay.
So.
Not so healthy, but it's okay to eat it as long as you're not just eating that.
Yeah.
And now he says that when I offer him ice cream, he says, "No, I don't want ice cream now, Dad." And I'm shocked. I almost want to just force him to eat the ice cream, because I just think, what kid doesn't eat ice cream?
Exactly. Right. Wow.
And it's now, I think maybe it's a phase. It's something that I've just seen kind of develop, but it's a very interesting thing, because I don't think I would ever have expected that before.
Or maybe it's not a phase, and that's how the new generation is being, is growing up, actually.
That's a scary future. A future without ice cream and alcohol is a scary future.
Well, Dave, excuse me, we call it gelato where I come from. Okay?
Sorry, you're right. That's fine.
No, wow, man. I don't know. I think, as I was telling you earlier, I think if they can, because in the end of the day, it's a good, look, being thoughtful and being aware of certain things is good. There is nothing bad about it. I think if it turns into an obsession, then it might have negative effects, because obsession over things is never good, right? It's always a game of balance in the end of the day.
It's a different type of abuse. I think sometimes you can see that you are so focused on training and getting stronger that you're eating creatine and protein shakes, and then you're just this blown up muscle man, and that seems unhealthy to some extent.
Yeah, even mentally.
And mentally, that could be a thing. I think you can abuse all sorts of things, and I am totally for the balance point, but different people, different balance points in different things. And we're I think we have so much more information now than we've ever had before, just based off of what you can find on the internet, the type of information you can find out about health. You can find out if I have this type of symptom, what do I have? You can almost self-diagnose yourself with all these things that you couldn't do before, and people can become more health focused. And there's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think we have that as our future, that we have so much information at our hands that it hopefully becomes better for the whole of society.
Hopefully. But Dave, have you
But
noticed,
it means less alcohol.
Okay. Yeah. Well, apparently. So on that matter, have you noticed any interesting patterns internally at Vinmonopolet with that consumption, apart from the stating the obvious that people are drinking less?
Yeah, we had this. We look at just the sales statistics. We see COVID, and it was a huge year as far as sales for the wine monopoly, because we closed the borders. There's no flight traffic, so you can't go to these duty-free shops and buy your alcohol to bring it in. So everybody had to come to us. So we jumped up to over 100 million liters in sales of wine, spirits, and beer. And now we're kind of coming down from that romantic period. And even the bars and restaurants, we stole sales from them because people are having home parties. Everybody was still trying to engage and be social and do social drinking, but then they had to come to us. Now bars and restaurants are open. Planes are going, and we're seeing falling sales from every year since 2021, and the new where the new drinking habits are, we're still a little bit unsure about, but we do notice that the products are growing. I'm fortunate enough for this stuff that I'm working with, so cider is going up in sales, beer is going up in sales, but also alcohol free. So alcohol free sales have really jumped up, where we're selling over 1 million liters with alcohol-free alternative drinks.
That's a combination of alcohol-free wine, alcohol-free beer, alcohol-free spirits.
Alcohol-free spirits, alcohol-free alternatives that are with, let's say, an apple juice with ginger in it. That gives you a type of a party drink feel, a cocktail feel to it. Mm-hmm. So then these types of alternatives are now selling more than champagne.
Wow. I guess my question at this point will be this, right? If we had to analyze the pattern in the past few years, starting right before COVID and then COVID and then post-COVID, right? Because yes, you experienced a peak during COVID, right? And then, of course, the numbers went down because obviously as restaurants and bars started being functioning again, then people spent less time at home and more time outside in these bars. And that's where they would source their alcohol, basically, right? Yeah. And therefore, you guys have witnessed sort of a fall down in numbers, if you want to call it like that. But then can you argue that maybe that wasn't really a fall down, that the numbers went just or are just going back to what they were before COVID?
There's definitely that factor that can be there, because our total sales in 2019 were still not as high as what we were last year, for example. So we do sell more than what we did back then. Can we say that people are drinking more in Norway than what they did back then? We have maybe a little bit higher population, so you can say there's a little bit of an increase that you could put there. Are they really drinking that much more? No, probably not. So the increase that we see in total sales doesn't reflect what the total drinking habits of people are. And there's a lot of sales statistics that we don't have the privilege to see, like what is brought in from import, from people going out of the country and bringing in alcohol. Those numbers are mostly hidden for us. There's some idea And there's that's a political question in Norway as well too, of how many people go across the border and buy stuff from Sweden. It's a big thing for a lot of producers, let's say. And it's not only alcohol; it's also all this soft drinks and these sorts of things where you're going on your tacky trip, they call it over here.
Man, I could sit here and talk for hours with you about this actually. But
I've done it twice myself. I've only done it twice in my life just so I could see these places and experience this. But I feel like it's too far it's too much of a hassle for me, anyways.
Let's go back to beer.
Yeah.
Right, because you do have a lot of expertise on beer. This magic, timeless liquid that is being consumed by billions of people throughout history, all over the world.
Yeah, you make it sound so romantic.
Yeah, I do.
I like that. That was good.
Was not prepared, by the way. It just came to me.
It's good. What do we do after that? It was very romantic.
I'll try and come up with something. No, it's your turn now.
Yeah.
No, so my point is a massive industry.
Yeah.
So much variety.
Yeah.
And now with so much variety comes a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings and just confusion in general.
Yeah.
So let's organize it a little bit. All right. Let's just clean it up as much as we can.
Yeah.
First of all, is there such a thing as objective quality in beer? That's a question I have to ask every guest that come here that has expertise on a certain topic.
Objective quality is what me personally thinks what the quality of the product is. Yeah.
But then it will be subjective. Right?
That's subjective. Sorry, I'm trying to get that clear right there.
So subjective is your perception and your liking of a certain product, right?
Yeah. Because now you're Italian, explaining this to me in English in my own language. I like it. It's good. Subjective and objective.
And objective is the opposite. Objective is basically a quality criteria, or it's an objectively good quality product is a product that meets certain criteria, and these criteria have to be sort of universal and measurable, right, in terms of quality.
But there's two schools of thought, I think, when people come into quality, when we call objective quality, let's say. I'd say that there is a clinical and scientific objectivity with it, where you can have parameters that you measure towards a type of a standardized product. This is what I started with as a laboratory guy, measuring. This is objective quality. If we're trying to come to the same spot and have this same product, we can measure a lot of these from the process and have critical control points where we get to the same point and hopefully the same flavor. And then you have another type of school of thought where we can make a product using a process, but we want to make sure that we use the best raw materials so that good raw materials go into making a good product all the time, because we're using good quality materials. And this we see with cooking culture and these sorts of things. We want to use the freshest ingredients. And if we started that base, of course, we'll always get to that quality because we use the best raw materials. Or you're saying we have the raw materials and we're going to follow that through process. This type of schools of thought, I think you see a little bit of a conflict with how people have this discussion when you're talking small scale producers versus big scale producers, where bigger producers can have a type of a laboratory and have a type of a quality system which has more control on the process and making sure that we meet parameters, whereas you have a smaller producer that can then have a more focus on the raw materials and be closer to the raw materials because it's a smaller process. And then you start from there, and then because of your process, you create the best product out of that. And those are the two schools of thoughts that are really at odds sometimes.
Dave, hold on. You're telling me that big producers don't necessarily produce commercial, high volume, low quality beers just based on the fact that they're big?
Well, I think if you combine these two things, that if you can have a control and have very good raw materials and have this on a huge scale, you're of course going to have good quality to some extent as well too. You have producers, let's say, that are closer to hop fields and producers that are closer to where the barley is grown. And these then have access to masses of these raw materials and then can be very quality producers. So this sometimes when we look at British German, Czech producers, or in some cases American, or in a lot of cases American producers as well too, with their American barley and American hops, they are so close to where these things are grown that they then have fresher raw materials sometimes, and they can then create this quality product from it. The real question is sometimes is those are the start points, but then logistics is almost as equally important afterwards, where the product, you want to make sure that it gets fresh to the customer. It's this extra dimension on how we talk about what a quality product is, because a quality product at point A, where we've produced it, we've tasted it as producers, doesn't mean it becomes a quality product 6 months later in a store shelf if it's warm half the way across the world. So
Supply chain.
The supply chain is a very important part, especially for beer.
Right, but that wouldn't be your responsibility, or partly because you want to make sure, to extend the life shelf of that beer, for instance, without adding too much stuff in it that will alter the flavor and stabilizers and things like this, right? But the moment, so purely from a liquid stand, right?
Yeah.
What are the characteristics, universally speaking, that a good quality beer should have?
A good quality beer will have a representation of the raw materials in it. So you have a lot of water in there, so it's going to be pretty watery. And it's
mostly water.
It's mostly water. So you're going to have, but the quality of the water is very important. So brewers will adjust the water quality with salts, with acidity to soften the palate or give a harder texture based off of maybe a type of brewing tradition, or to recreate the type of characteristics from a water source from a different part of the world. There's a lot of talk about German and Czech beers having a very soft water as a base point, so that it's a very dry and refreshing product. So some people do this type of adjustment. So then you have that. You have malt, which is then malted barley in most cases, which you're then going to get your sugar source. So you're getting your alcohol from that, and you need the alcohol to be a part of the product, unless it's alcohol-free beer. But you're getting a type of sweetness from it as well too, and a raw material character. And that raw material character is influenced by the type of drying level that's been done during the malting process, because with the kilning of the grain, we talk about the kilning when we're talking about whiskeys a lot as well too, and the character that you get from that. But it was a preservative step that we used historically in farms and everything like this. If we took in corn from the field, and if it was very wet, it would be, it wouldn't store as well. So you would have to dry it down. Sometimes you would put it on a drying stone on the farm level, and then you would be able to then use it later on in the year for breads and these sorts of sources. But from this damp to drying thing, someone figured out if you let it be damp for a while and then you dry it again, you actually start to make better beer of it. And this is how the malting process kind of evolved in this sort of thing. So
can we talk about that for a second, just briefly? So essentially, the malting process of barley.
Yeah.
It's a process that includes which steps briefly, and what does it do exactly?
You start with the raw barley, and you take let's say it's 12 to 14% moisture content when it comes from the field. Could be a lot higher, up to 18%. You have to then do a process to create enzyme activity in these. You want these...
So to activate the enzymes. Right?
Activate the enzymes. You want this plant to think that it's actually a new season. It's going to grow and turn it into a cute little plant and live its life as a barley plant. But what you actually do is you say, okay, you can start your cute little life and you can grow into a little green shoot and everything, and create all these enzymes that are going to break down our sugars now, our starches. Because this is what we want. We want to get our starch degrading enzymes, and this is where the biochemistry comes in. and you say, these are the key things that are going to be created. And now once we have these, we're going to kill the plant. And we dry the plant out at that point. So we go from 12 to 14% moisture up to 40%. And then the plant thinks that it's the new season, a little bit more damp.
So you basically trick the plant into thinking that it's time to germinate, and then so it can activate these enzymes.
Yeah.
And these enzymes are so important because these are the same enzymes that will carry on starch conversion later on.
Yes, yeah.
Makes
that we
sense.
now utilize in the mashing process later on. And when we're kilning or when we're drying out this moisturized small living plant, we're both killing the plant, but we're preserving the enzyme. So we do this in a careful procedure with warmth and with airflow to make sure that it's dried in a good way. If we wanted to preserve the enzymes, sometimes we do it if we wanted to have a little bit more of a flavor from the corn as well too. So we can have caramelization that also happens in this process, and you can get different type of specialty malts. So these are the things. These now you have your sugar source, and you're creating that, you're using that for your alcohol, but then you're also having these flavor elements. You can have caramels, you can have bready type flavors, you can roast this barley now so that you get a darker beer. You're getting your stouts from this type of
Which
process.
helps you differentiate, which helps you break down the billions of different beers available in the market into sort of categories as well, based on the raw material and maybe the technique and maybe a certain flavor profile that consumers expect.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into all of that. But I think in order to just bring some clarity, right? So we've been talking about malting and what it does.
Yeah.
And the reason malting is so important because it is because it activates the enzymes that convert starch to sugar.
Yeah.
And the reason why that's important is because yeasts which carry on fermentation, they cannot eat starch.
No.
Make sense?
Makes sense.
Can you just take me through that?
So then you have starches. That's the saving of the energy in the plant, so that they can use it again to grow in the spring before they turn into a green little plant, and they can use photosynthesis. So you have this starch to then grow. Now we need to break down all this starch with the enzymes, and then when we've killed the plant, you're creating the sugars, but the sugars aren't being used up by that plant. The plant's dead. So then we have these sugars, we throw the yeast in there, and then the yeast says, great, I'm going to use this sugar, and my byproduct from that life cycle and growing off of this sugar now creates alcohol. And that's the basis for all alcohol, all fermentation, all alcoholic fermentation. Thank you very much.
Yes,
if we really want to geek on it. So then that is the byproduct from the Saccharomyces cerevisiae family that most products are fermented with, alcohol fermentations. So now that's in, and you're getting also flavor aromas from that as well too. So now you've got malt characters, you have yeast aroma characters, the water element that gives you majority of the product, but then you also have hops that are added in, which are a preservative.
That's another raw material.
Another raw material. You say the big four. You say water, malt, hops, yeast. As far as the contributing size.
Should we go through those briefly? All of them, just briefly.
Water we've talked about.
Yes, but I want to understand the difference between hard and soft.
Hard and soft water. Hard and soft water.
Because you mentioned soft water, right?
Yeah, soft water, you're saying that you have soft water as a good start point to have a more dry and clean product, a lighter tasting product, whereas the more salts you're adding are creating more of a heavy, saltier flavor, which maybe weighs down or makes it a little bit more, can contribute to bitterness maybe. And this simulates a little bit what water quality was in different parts of the world. So again, Czech had very soft water, so their pilsners and everything are more light and refreshing. In the north parts of the United Kingdom, maybe they had harder water sources, so then they have more of these bitter beers and more of a heavy flavor ales. If you're going to break it down a little bit historically, and the chemistry kind of supports a little bit of that, so you go that way as well. But all waters need salts in them as micronutrients for the yeast anyway. So you're always doing some sort of adjustment to make sure that the yeast really lives its life cycle and uses that sugar to create alcohol. So
Very good.
So there's
So water we covered, barley we covered.
Yeah.
Hops.
Hops.
What are hops?
Hops are a type of a climbing plant, a vine climbing plant that has been cultivated very long time over. There's probably records that go back at least 2,000 years. It's been known. As far as the use in beer, it's been known for over 1,000 years.
Is it true that it belongs to the family of cannabis?
It's related to cannabis. It's got a lot of interesting chemical properties as far as flavor and as far as preservative. I love talking about the oil aroma compounds. This is my biochemistry thing, talking about terpenoid synthesis and these types of things that go actually create aromas and things that we have in our deodorant, that we have in our gin, and they're also very important aroma compounds for our hops. And you have linalool and geraniol and these chemicals, piney, rose,
limonene,
citrus elements, these sorts of things that can, and you're getting tropical fruits as well too from some of these aroma compounds. And if you add these hops later on in the processing of the beer, when you're not cooking or heating the product, then you're able to maintain some of these oil compounds, these oil elements. But if you're using them earlier on when you're going to boil,
you get some bitterness.
You get bitterness, but that bitterness is the preservative part of the hops, so that you have an iso alpha acid. I can't even remember what it's called anymore.
That's fine. I don't know.
Alpha acids.
Okay.
I summarize alpha acids. That's the one that creates the type of bitterness, the preservative of beer, that helps a lot with that.
Preserves the beer, and hence why you were talking about the freshness.
Yeah.
Right. So that is sort of a natural preservative.
It helps. It helps against gram positive bacteria.
Right.
So gram negative not as well, but it definitely helps with weaker alcohol products and fighting off some forms of bacteria infection.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Another big player in the beer production is yeast. So we cover all four.
Yeah.
Now there are different types of yeast. You mentioned one of them early on,
Saccharomyces cerevisiae,
which is also known as cultured yeast or cultivated yeast. Or
it's the most common yeast that we have in the world. That's also used for baking breads as well too, in a lot of cases. And it is it's what is our source for cultivated yeast for wines and for beers and for spirits. And so you can buy this as a product, as a dry form, as a liquid form, to then add into your production process if you're not going to do it in a type of a natural, spontaneous way, which is also something that can happen.
Exactly. So I want to talk about that as well. But why would you choose a cultivated yeast instead of wild or natural yeast, if you want to call it like that?
You have to
what
talk
are the benefits.
You go the whole history back to Louis Pasteur, and Louis Pasteur starts to study microbes, and he says these are the things that are creating these symptoms as far as sickness, or they're creating this cloudiness in this product, and he's saying that these results that we're seeing are from microbes. And then you say that he's saying if you just have these specific type of microbes, they can then create sickness here, or they are resulting in alcoholic fermentation. So Estudes sur le vin was the book that he wrote about the maladies and problems in the wine industry and things he could do to help solve it. He also did the same thing with beer, a book about that. And he then inspires these other chemists that became microbiologists to then say, we're going to see if we can isolate the good yeast, the one that's going to give the flavor, the character for our beer. We're going to use this to make our beer the whole way. And this is this history that goes back to Emil Hansen Christiansen at Carlsberg, that then isolates the first commercial yeast strain for that brewery. And then it kind of goes on from there. So this type of we can isolate, we can just go down to a specific one-celled organism, make a lot of it, and that will give us the character of what we want, this this flavor profile, this stability that comes from it. That's exactly what we want from that one type of microorganism, and that has then just spread across the industry. This type of standardization.
How do you isolate it? Would be the question at this point.
I don't think I'm that good myself to figure that out, but you can look at it under the microscope and you can characterize what it was and the results that you get from that. So you can get the single cell thing. You could then grow it up in a nutrients solution, and you say, what's the result from that? If I grow it up in a wort, am I getting that flavor? If I'm growing up this other one that I saw that's a little bit different from that one. And now we have biological, signposts that we can see with DNA that we know which thing we're classifying is.
Because then if you know what it is, then you can recreate it, right?
Yep.
Sort of. That's funny. A few years ago, I was visiting the US. 2-3 years ago, I was in Kentucky and Tennessee to
bourbon.
Go visit museums, of course. And I was so I was traveling a few different distilleries, and there was a distillery I was at where, because you go to many distilleries, right? Especially in the US, but this happens all over the world, and they all tell you, we've been using the same yeast strain, whiskey distilleries, yes? Yeah. We've been using the same yeast strain for 150 years, 200 years, 100 years, 80 years. Yeah. And then after the 5th time I heard it, the question came spontaneously. I was like, how do you keep the same yeast strain alive for 100? What do you mean exactly? Right? So a guy did something he was not supposed to do. He was like, come to me. I like you. Come with me. I'll take you to the lab. Yeah. So I spoke with the lab guy, and then he showed me. And basically, super simple and basic. The way they keep it alive is that they have a sample of it, and they have it in a jar, right? Yeah. And they keep feeding it with the sugary solution so it doesn't basically stop working or die. And of course, the way they keep it alive is by not incubated, but what's the word?
They freeze it. You have a type of a deep freeze as well too, so you can isolate and then have a little culture that you deep freeze that you then revitalize. So you have a yeast bank. Right. Where you can then propagate up and then create and sell or just go up from that original source. So these things are, we have a seed bank up in 𝒟𝒏𝓎𝗙 where we have all the seeds in the world, yes. If we need them again. And then you have these yeast banks where you have all these different yeast varieties in the world, and you have different sources of yeast that are frozen down that distilleries, wineries, breweries can call upon to then. We need to bring up this culture again, or they can be researched in the future for some specific reason.
I'm having so much fun, man. I'm telling you, this is great. So that's Saccharomyces. Jesus Christ, always a mouthful, this one. Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Yeah. Cerevisiae. Yeah. Which is also known as cultured yeast. Let's just call it cultured yeast. Yeah. The other side of the medal is Brettanomyces, right? Yeah. Yeah. Also known as wild or ambient, or how do you want to categorize that?
It's one of the forms of wild yeast. Yes, ambient yeast. Another form of the same family, a yeast, but then gives you different flavor compounds. It utilizes different sugars, creates a different type of flavor profile in some cases.
Would you say it's a little less predictable?
It's always going to be kind of present in the environment, Brettanomyces, and then depending on how clean your processes are, you could get a type of influence from it. It's prevalent in wine production. It can be prevalent in beer production if you do not have standard cleaning procedures to try to get rid of it, and then isolate just your single-celled stuff. So there's a lot of things that can come, but it's not only just Brettanomyces. If it is an ambient thing, you're really talking, that's one thing, but then you're talking about lactobacillus, you're talking about pediococcus, you're talking about a lot of these different things that are naturally over all surfaces, dust on the outside of the grape skins, on the outside of the corn, on the malt. You have these microbes that are living there anyways, and then depending on how you're processing, what your process is, you're either keeping some level of this or you're trying to get rid of it. So wild and spontaneous fermentation, you create a type of complexity in products that's quite lovely, and a lot of kind of connoisseurs are after some elements of this to give this type of more rustic and more interesting flavor. But for some producers, and often if you're not talking about a spontaneously fermented beer, as a beer producer, you don't want it. You don't want lactobacillus there. You don't want pediococcus. You don't want Brettanomyces. You don't want barnyard. You don't want the acidity or the vinegar, or you don't want the butteriness, acidity as well too with lactobacillus. So you're going. You want clean if you're not spontaneously fermented. In a lot of cases.
Beautiful. Okay, so we covered the four sort of raw material, if you want to call it like that, or the four basic elements, right, of ingredients, yes, to create a beer. But now, just to close the chapter of quality, and then we move on. Can you give me, if you can, maybe there aren't, but I have to ask you this, certain characteristics purely that I should look for in a quality beer purely in the liquid-wise, right? So a good beer would be an objectively good beer if ... It has what?
A good beer meets your expectations as a consumer. If you don't know what beer is, then you're probably looking for a lighter, refreshing thing that you've trying for the first time, so it's probably got freshness to it. It's not sour. It's a little bit sweet, a little bit bitter, pretty watery, but Pilsner type of thing. We're mostly introduced to beer through that way. But then there's different subtypes and groups. We're talking about stouts and all these other things.
And we get into that. I think you explained it beautifully earlier when you said a good quality beer is a beer where, or at least part of it, there should be some sort of balanced expression of the raw materials used.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's the playing up the raw materials so that you get a type of a quality from that. A balance is nice, and when you're shifting the balance, then you get these different interesting subcategories as well too. But it's also quite lovely. But at the same time, freshness is good for the majority of things that aren't then spontaneously fermented.
Right. And I think at this point, we can connect what you were saying just a minute ago. I believe you were saying something along the lines of a good quality beer is a beer that meets your expectations, right?
Yeah.
And we can connect it to the next point, which is beer categories.
Yeah.
Right? Because what are your expectations based on? Based on the label, right? That you see in front of you.
Yeah.
You read Pilsner, you read lagers, and you have certain expectations of that beer. However, in the beer industry, you're going to expand on this, I guess, in a second. There aren't that many laws or legally protected labeling terms, right? There are not that many, at least compared to other industries like the spirits industry and maybe wine for that matter. So how do I know what to expect if there aren't so many laws protecting certain labeling terms?
It's difficult, I think. I think it's a challenge for consumers these days, maybe to know what the product is. There has been a growth in understanding of what beer is since the late 70s, since we had a writer that was called Michael Jackson, like the pop singer, but he was a Polish, immigrated Polish, but a British author that really did some research.
And his name was Michael Jackson.
And his name was Michael Jackson. And he talked about the history behind a lot of these products and these beers that they were able to see on the UK market, but then expanded that to the US and talk about the global beer scene. And through his writings, people started to break things up into categories. And we started to develop this idea of what type of beer should be based off of these traditions that, they had a name that was called pale ale, and pale ales through a British standard are a little bit different than what they were from an American standard, but they followed a type of a history. Raw material use was a little bit different, but they kind of got a different expectation then from this developing of the industry. And if you're talking about when we're going back to the 70s and 80s, there was a lot less small producers at that point. A lot of producers had disappeared from the world, and there was a lot of global brands and big producers in the world, not craft beer producers, let's say, at that point. And then that started to develop again, and a lot of that based off of enthusiasm in the American craft beer movement, and from the writings, and also in the United Kingdom based off of real ale and some of the stuff that Michael Jackson was writing about, and this history and this heritage that was going away. So through this building of interest, so people started to say, okay, we want some of these old beer styles. There was a point where there was no porter being brewed in the world, I think in the 70s, so that the porter had to be revitalized. There was still Guinness, but that was being called a stout. And now we have really revitalization of these types of niche beer styles and niche beer things that have engaged, this craft beer movement for the last 30 years or over that, and then now has defined what we're talking about, what beer is today. And then from that, what we've inherited from that 30 years, there is a certain expectation of someone who knows a little bit about beer. I should know what an IPA is, an India Pale Ale. Based off of that name, I should expect something that has a high concentration of hop aromas, maybe a good bitterness to it, but then has a hop focus to the product. If I'm getting a Belgian blonde, I should have something that's more focused on the yeast fermentation, the quality of the yeast fermentation that comes from the Belgian yeast that's used in that product, and it's blonde, so it's a lighter type of color to that product. So these type of identifiers are based off of the history in a lot of these cases, but there's no rules. So all of a sudden you could have a different interpretation if you're a different brewery and you say, I'm going to do something a little bit different with my Belgian blonde. I'm going to add American hops to it, and it's my take on a Belgian blonde.
Going to be a hop-driven beer rather than a yeast-driven beer.
It has a little bit more citrus to it because I use American hops, and there's an experimentation that came from that, and which was really interesting and was a fun part of that community for many years. And you still see a lot of experimentation in the craft brewing scene. But as far as the consumer focus about what they are supposed to be getting, what they expect, it's you have an expectation from a little bit of history, and then you really might have to know the supplier sometimes to really know what you're kind of going to get.
Would you agree we need some more regulation there, or categorization?
We have a lot of categorization in the EU. I think if we were to, you know this about the spirits regulations, and if we look at what those spirit regulations are and how they download to how we talk about spirits and classify spirits, it's pretty top heavy there. And I think it's...
No, I mean on beer.
And beer? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, do we really need that on beer as well too? We have it with wine as well too. Beer, we have it...
I see your argument there. Okay.
Beer, we have it with beer that's produced in certain regions. For example, the Munich area, if it's going to be a Munich beer or Oktoberfest. Oktoberfest is a protected categorization, and it can be just produced in the Munich area. So you cannot call a product in the EU an Oktoberfest beer unless it's produced in Munich and or by a Munich brewery. And the Czechs, they have this. There's actually some weird, obscure British rules about Yorkshire beer, I think. So there's some regulations, but there's never been a collective movement to try to do this.
Because in order to have that, you would have to get all the big players in the industry together, and you should have them agree on what each style is, and probably there will be some, people with different opinions or mismatch.
Yeah,
I guess, right? So that would be complicated, I guess. But I don't know. I think, for the sake of the consumer, really,
I think for the sake of the consumer, with the more producers that we have and the more producers that have their own interpretation, the more confusing it can be for the consumer.
Exactly, that's
that
my
I
point,
see,
right?
And I agree with that as well. But you lose a little bit of the creativity, the inspiration as well too when you put too many rules on it as well. So it is a good debate point. Balance is good. So I don't know which way I would go there.
No. Okay. I have the $1 million question for you.
Okay.
What's the difference between a Pilsner and a lager?
A Pilsner is a lager beer in a sense that it's the same thing. A lager isn't a Pilsner unless... How would you talk about this? Because this is the history. Pilzen, Plzen, is a place in the Czech Republic now. Pilsner, the beer that comes from Pilsen. So technically, when we say Pilsner, it should come from there. In a sense, but it's become this type of identifier for a style or quality of lager beer that's supposed to be very clean, very dry, crisp, good bitterness to it, but it's a lager anyways, a lager beer, and lager beer is more of the typical description in the German way of calling these things because it's from lager, or like the storage of the product, the cold storage that then creates this clearer, cold, let's say more cleaner flavor from the lagering process that they developed there.
It's bottom fermentation, top fermentation, or whatever.
Because we're talking about Bavarian, Bohemian traditions that then created more of the bottom fermentation tradition, which is colder, more careful alcohol fermentation processes, which create less fruitiness, less yeast character from it, and at the same time they also created more of a stability and less of a cloudy beer as well too. But lager beer was a response to British beer first, because a huge export product before lager beer was developed, this lighter colored lager beer, was pale ale. So really the people that were best at creating light colored exportable beers were the Brits first, and then the Bohemians, the Bavarians. They took the ideas of the technology, and it's the small communities probably even at that point. If you look at the beer regions, the classical ones, the UK, Belgium, Bavaria, Bohemia, they're not that far away.
No,
you have a very small circle in the world where all these people can go and travel and share ideas. And I feel like that was a big part of the development of beer as a historical beverage in these 1700s, 1800s, 1900s.
So how do we categorize beers then?
I like to look at the tradition more than anything else, and I like to think of it as the raw material focus. So I like when we talk about a British tradition. I like when we talk about a Belgian tradition, German, Czech. If we're not saying Bavarian and Bohemian, we're saying German and Czech, and let's say American tradition now too, because of the craft beer and the raw materials that you're getting there have kind of spread around the world as well too, where you have a lot of producers that have really been inspired by that. So these 5 traditions, and then are you having a hop forward beer? I like saying that. Are you having a malt forward beer, more stout, more amber product? Or are you having more of a yeast driven product? Is it spontaneously fermented sour beer, or is it Belgian style beer where you have a warmer fermentation process, more fruitiness, more of a spice character from the yeast?
Man, I tried this lambic beer for the first time some years ago. Yeah, it was one of the weirdest beers I've ever experienced in my life, and I fell in love with it.
Yeah, and it's spontaneously fermented, and that is a protected process. When you say lambic, it means that it's spontaneously fermented. When you call it a gueuze, it's a blend of different ages of lambic beers. So these are types of qualities that are also protected in a sense as well too. I don't know how well it works for these products at this point. It's not, the whole world doesn't know about these, or the whole drinking world that maybe doesn't drink so much beer. But the quality on these products are quite nice, but there's not so much focus on it either. Sometimes we call them sour beers, which is sometimes unfair because they are maybe dry, maybe a little bit more acidity, but it doesn't mean that they're sour. In a sense, but very complex, very lovely products that go well with food.
Right. Yes, and we'll talk about that in a second as well. But just to close this other super interesting chapter, from the point of the consumer, right? What would be the best way to categorize beers so we make it easier for them? And I think it should be probably flavor wise, right? Can we use malt, hops, yeast as a focus? Otherwise, we have to go into beer styles and categories. I think, hop driven again, malt driven, yeast driven.
Yeah.
Do you think that would be an easy way to categorize them?
I feel like we can simplify things a little bit. That we have a hop focus, that we're after the hop aromas. These maybe IP India Pale Ale products, or some variant that way. If it's a malty thing, you're maybe expecting deeper color, more of a sweetness, more of a body. Maybe we're talking,
malty cereal characters.
Yeah, we're talking raw materials that are giving a result.
Right.
I like that.
I love that
combination. It's not my idea.
No.
Someone else came up with that, but I like to use it every once in a while.
What is an IPA?
India Pale Ale is a
How would you categorize it in that spectrum?
Hop driven.
Okay.
There's different traditions now and subcategories of that, but mostly hop driven, especially the American style, which it is with a lot of hop addition to give a lot of oil aromas and flavors from hops. British is a little bit different, a little bit more classic, but still more bitter hop aromas and profiles.
I'm in the mood for a beer now, man.
I'm getting thirsty. When you're talking a lot, it is
Got some water.
more refreshing. That works, but it's not a beer.
Just in case of fire. No. Soon. We're getting close to the end.
Yeah.
I have so many questions for you. I'm really interested. This next point is an interesting one. Macro versus micro. Macro versus micro.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are we going to start a fight between the two of them?
I think that would be a very stupid way to go forward,
Yeah.
But no, well, again, from the consumer perspective, right? Because I think the people who will be watching this, few of them will be experts. Most will be, consumers.
Yeah.
So I want to give value to them. Does bigger mean better?
Bigger is...
In size, I mean.
Bigger
in production.
Production, you just produce more. And you can do it at a better price.
Let me rephrase. Yeah. I didn't phrase it correctly. Does smaller mean better?
Smaller mean better. That's another one.
Because that's the, many people, even in the spirits industry, they believe that the smaller the producer, the more local, that means better quality. Small batch, handcrafted, whatever the hell that means. If it's not legally protected, you can write, if as a term is not legally protected, you can write handcrafted and small batch, and you can use, you can produce 50 million a year. You can still write that, in the end of the day, because how small is small, right? And there is this sort of debate in the beer industry as well, right? Among consumers, at least.
There is people that have preferences that way, I think. And I think this comes back to what I said before about being able to standardize and look at standard things on a product and say this is a type of quality, and then looking at the raw materials that go in and saying this is where you're going to get your quality from. We're using the best raw materials, handcrafted, followed through the process, nurtured to your glass. This is very important. Whereas big producers can still use very good raw materials, but then it's on a very big scale. But it still is a type of quality that goes through. So these qualities, where are they meeting? Is it from the small or is it from the big? And I think that, again, this extra element of who's doing the best logistics is actually sometimes the most important. I think you can use the best raw materials and you could ruin a product just as well as you could use all right raw materials and, again, have a better product than something that's oxidized and something that's been sitting out warm or is very old. You could get a much better industrial product this way. And this is not to say that the small producers are not as good, but logistics, they don't have as many the logistical advantages of having a big producer.
Because of resources, right?
Resources. So you have a type of a turnaround with your product, with the sales volumes. You can have a logistics department that then plans your production so that you make sure you get a fresh product out to the consumer to a expected sales. You get sales forecasts that you're following. So then you're actually you're making this logistical beast that is able to keep things fresh. And it's not to say that a small supplier can't do that either. I know of a few that actually do set a very high price on logistics and getting fresh beer to the consumer and trying to make sure that their product tastes best as it can out in the market. But there's not so many that have had that focused, I think. I think that's something that's always fallen off from smaller producers. And I think maybe to be critical, especially I started as well too in a lot of ways in a small producer. I've worked for both big and small, but I've seen that I think sometimes coming from a small producer background, we haven't worked that much in the industry before either. Sometimes people have just hopped in.
Right.
And they don't really have that understanding. Hopped in. It was not intended at all. But the just jumping into the industry and saying, this looks cool, looks like fun, and then not having the full understanding of what's really important, what's going to create the value for your product down the road for a customer, and where you really need to set your money to make sure that you're making sure that your customer's happy. There's a lot of these things that it's business perspective things, and this is maybe not your focus as a small craft producer. It's the business side that is very important, and business is what we're doing here. We're selling a product to a consumer, and the logistics have to be there, the sales have to be there to then create these things again to go out fresh. So it's great that I like to produce IPAs, and I think they taste great at the brewery, but how am I going to make sure that they taste just as good in a small bottle and can for that guy who also agrees with me and wants to buy my products? But let's say he's not in Norway, he's in Belgium. Different country. So there's so many challenges with that it's so difficult for a small supplier to really get that quality thing down. But you can focus on your local community, your local demand, and then you do have this type of localist type better thing. And maybe if you have that focus with your business, then you say, this is going to create the value to my company. And then, we have brew pubs, let's say, that you produce the beer there, and then people can visit your brewery and they sit down there, they drink your beers. It's not packaged in any sort of can. It comes from a keg, it comes from a tank. And then it's fresh. It's as fresh as you can get it. So this type of concept is interesting, and even smaller breweries that then take care of a smaller community. So this way you can kind of keep that quality and really create that value for the customer there.
Dave, talking about shelf life, can you explain to me what light strike is? Because I know it's a very common. It's something that happens very commonly to many beers, because even bars and restaurants don't really know how to store beers properly, maybe.
Yeah.
And can you tell me if it's true that typically, if it's a hop-driven beer, it will be, in a transparent glass bottle, stored in a transparent glass bottle. That product will probably be a bit more. There is a higher chance that it will be affected by light strike.
Yeah. So what light strike is from the chemical breakdown of the hop bitterness.
Right.
Chemical.
There you go.
So there's a side chain that is affected by UVA light that then is kind of separated from the rest of the hop bitterness compound, and then it combines with another sulfur compound that's found within the beer that then creates a skunk flavor.
Right.
And this UV light is all light can have a portion of this, and this light we can filter out actually with darker glass to some extent, not 100%, but some extent. So brown glass is the best for it. When it's more of a green glass, more of this UVA light gets through. So you have more of this light that can then cleave and break down this bitterness chemical. And if it's a completely clear glass, then you have no protection whatsoever. This light can just come in and break down the chemical so that you're getting more of this this skunk flavor to your beer. And I've tasted this effect just from having a beer poured from a keg. The keg has no glass in it. It's just it's in a steel container. And when it's poured into your glass at a bar or restaurant, and if you're out in the sun, and if you just wait, 5-10 minutes, you start to get this effect already because you have such strong sunlight and the UVA that is then creating this effect. So this skunky aroma, we know what skunks are in North America. We have a lot of them over there, and it's completely undesirable. And some other places you don't really know what it is sometimes. In some countries, it's not as big of a theme, but it does affect how you develop a product and what sort of packaging that you're put in. There's some breweries that know about this effect that have a special type of hop that is protected against this.
Oh, wow.
So then a clear glass bottle that doesn't get the light struck effect. And they've created this then product through product development where you don't have this problem. And they can export it. It could be on a bar shelf, dusty, whatever, and it does not get the light struck.
Right.
So
Is that a relatively new thing?
It's probably developed in the last 30 years.
Right.
I'm guessing even before that. I remember learning about it in beer school. I don't know how old I am, but it's been around for a long time. New kind of chemical development. So
beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's great, but it's definitely a quality issue that maybe not a lot of people think about.
Wow. Okay, Dave, we're towards the end now. You do have a big chunk of experience we didn't cover. I'd like to do it now, if possible.
Yeah.
You did open 2 or 3 distilleries yourself.
Not myself. But
Well,
I
not
was
yourself.
part. I
You
was
were
part of
part
developing
yes, of
3
course.
distilleries.
Sorry, yes,
Yeah.
you were part of.
Maybe 4.
I was trying to give you more credit there. See, if you were Italian, you would have been like, yes, I did open 4 distilleries, 5 myself, all me. But there was the Canadian honest man in you that said, "Well, hold on, wasn't me."
Yeah, I'd get angry calls from people if I said it otherwise, I think.
No. Okay. So, what are the challenging aspects that people do not think about opening a distillery when opening a distillery?
I think it will be, again, let's say there's a lot of different things that can be challenging. I think the EU regulations, you have to really know the EU regulations first, and that can go into designing your distillery, actually, because there's such a specific quality to the raw materials that go into vodka and gin and this grain neutral spirit is the way that they called in the EU regulations, that then is a type of quality of spirit that can only be produced in very large quantities by column distilleries and multi-column distilleries, and this type of production is industrial and it's very expensive. So to do that at a very small scale, that's maybe not a good idea. So maybe you're buying this. This is already a first thing that you need to kind of consider.
And most producers buy it anyways.
Yeah. And they don't, and so if they at least have gotten that far, then you also have to say, what are these other products that we want to create, and then you have to kind of weigh off a type of product portfolio. Is it going to be spiced? Are we going to do this in so many years? And then what we really want to do is whiskey. You always hear these stories about whiskey distilleries that say it's going to be at least 3 years before we have whiskey. So
we're going to sell gin first.
How are we going to get money in the meantime? This is a great idea. And that's maybe when everybody's doing that same thing, it's maybe not the best business plan. So it comes back to that as well too. And the distillery sizing is often an issue because you don't really know where your market is. It's very difficult with spirit sales without marketing budgets and these sorts of things. It's very small volumes as well too. So to size your distillery in a proper way is very difficult to what your expected sales could be to what the reality is. There's fire code stuff that you have to be taking a look at to make sure that, as you're distilling, that there's not an alcohol leak and an explosion happens. There's actually specific
health and safety guidelines.
Health and safety, but also specific electricity, safety types like isolated wiring and these sorts of things that then go into it. And that's not only your distillery;
So
it's also
safety tools, essentially.
Yeah, but it's your building. So there's the fire codes on the building. It's where you're located. You shouldn't be located by a school, probably. These weird sorts of things that you are maybe a little bit looser with other things, but not with distilleries, because you are a hazardous material.
But bottom line is, it is much more complicated than the common person thinks.
It should be.
It should, of course, yeah, and it is.
It is. It is. All these things. It's a real career. It's a real focus skill set when you're talking about wine production, when you're talking about spirit production, when you're talking about beer production. There's people that have dedicated their lives and to create these types of products and these types of drinks, experiences. People that understand what producers are doing, that also try to explain it to other people when you're talking about sommeliers and these sorts of things. And these are such their careers into this that has been rewarding for me. I think it's been rewarding for a lot of people, but we're losing a little bit of that right now when we're losing smaller producers, when things are getting a little bit more tough economically, people are drinking less. It's a lot more tough in the industry than what it was when I started. Right. Anyways, and that's tough to see. You don't want to see the people that you started out with struggle. You don't want to see things be difficult when there was such positivity before, and it was and a lot of this works off of positivity and passion for what you're doing. Otherwise, a small farm creating wine,
that's romantic.
It's romantic, but it's hard as hell.
Yep.
And running an industrial sized distillery or brewery, and making sure that all the cogs go and all the machines function, everything's greased properly, and that it doesn't break down for 50% of the time. That's also difficult.
Yeah,
it's not rocket science, but
no, but also, imagine, the big guys, they perhaps, it's more people to take care of, so everything becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And, the smaller producers, they have the same problems, just different, I guess. It's never easy on either end, I guess.
No. But it should be fun.
Yeah, it's complicated to combine the two, right?
I think.
Not easy and fun.
Yeah, some days are better than others.
That's right. Dave, I want to close it with this. Let's go back to beer for a minute.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about beer as a drink and as an industry that people have?
I think the misconceptions of beer is the usage of beer, maybe. I think that we need to maybe have more beer at the dinner table. I don't think culturally it's been gotten that amount of respect. That's one thing I wanted to mention, at least anyways, when I came here, was to talk about that. Because
for food pairing.
Food pairing. I think that's an important thing. I think that's one thing that's fallen to the side. I know that people have tried to write books about beer and food pairing, and there have been people that have worked with that actively, but it's never really something that's kind of come culturally in a lot of places. You maybe see it in Belgium, places that have stronger beer cultures, and that type of combination, but it's usually trumped, and fine dining trumps a lot of things with wine and food combinations. You have sommeliers that are educated to lead a customer into what sort of wine selection they need to make with a certain dish, where that might not be the best combination. You might be able to go with a beer or a sake or another type of beverage, which then the sommelier then doesn't focus on. I feel like we should touch more on that. Beer is one thing. I like sake. When we were talking about sake before, I think that's a very great flavor combination to a lot of different things. And sometimes I think this comes down to the raw materials as well too, that it's more natural to have, we use bread in cuisine. We have grain-based things in cuisine that we put meat on, we put cheese on, we put all these combinations with grain. We don't set meat with grapes drizzled all over it a lot of the time, or we don't do these sorts of combinations. So I feel like you get that raw material play a little bit better sometimes with beer. I'm not going to debate what's better with cheese or anything like that, but it's this thing that we should have more focus on. I'd like to see as an industry.
You were telling me this a few months ago on our phone call, and I remember thinking, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So I'll tell you something, Dave. While the whole world, just to make you feel a bit more guilty about the fact that you've never been to Napoli.
Yeah.
While the whole entire world,
yeah,
or most of it, doesn't view beer as a good pairing with food, in Napoli, my dear friend Dave, we always eat pizza with beer. Always. And in fact, beer is made from cereals, grains,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Pizza is made from flour, which is basically just crushed grains.
Yeah.
Essentially what you've been talking about.
And I love that. I would love a burger together with a beer because
There's a bread element there as well.
yeah, you have the caramelization on the outside of the meat when you're grilling it, and you have some caramelization with some different types of beers. You have the bread element to it. You have Asian foods with sake, which are very natural combinations, or foods and dishes that we have with rice beside them. There's a lot of that as well too.
Yeah.
And again, when we're talking
Rice, right?
rice and rice, but again, when we're talking about caramelization and heating of food and charring of food, you can get a lot of these aspects that go easily into beer as well too, because you have this malting process, this kilning process that then creates the same Maillard compounds that then are in both areas. So there's some good interplay there that you can experiment more with. And thank God for Napoli that you guys at least know that pizza should go with beer.
Of course, yeah, man. It's pizza and beer. In Napoli, it's not pizza and wine. It's pizza and beer.
Yeah. There we go. You heard that here first. I'm with you guys, totally.
So just one more reason to come and visit.
I'm in. We talked about the tomatoes down there, and again, that's why I'm looking forward to. I'm going to book the trip just based solely on eating some good Napolese tomatoes.
Bring your family and bring your money to Italy. Our economy needs your money. So
don't have that much of it, but I'll do that.
Dave, this was an absolute pleasure. It was like a masterclass. I loved it.
I hope it was fun. Yeah, it was good for me as well too.
It was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot as well. Cheers.